A Plaguelands Media production.
Hey everyone, this is Hugh from Plaguelands Media bringing you an RPG review today, so cheers for that. Now, recently I've been feeling very nostalgic. I've been going back and reading fantasy novels that I read as a teenager. There's going to be a review of the novel Spellfire by Ed Greenwood up on the channel, possibly before you actually see this, so that might seem a little bit weird. And I've been recently kind of looking back at my Dungeons and Dragons days. I started playing Dungeons and Dragons with 2nd edition back in high school. Played 3rd edition, didn't play 4th edition, and I have just there the 5th edition source books. I know a lot of people poo-poo 5th edition, and there are better role-playing games out there, and I've already kind of done a rant and discussed all of that. But I wanted to kind of go back and revise, review, reread some of the source books that I either had or that I really, really wanted. Now, at the moment, I've been going through the Avatar trilogy by Richard Orlinson. That is Shadowdale, Tantris, and Waterdeep. This was the series of books that kind of bridged the gap between 1st and 2nd edition of D&D. And I decided to pick up from Drive-Thru RPG, print on demand, Hall of Heroes. First of all, absolutely love the cover. I think it's absolutely brilliant. All of the 2nd edition kind of source books that I've been recollecting just all look fantastic. Now, Hall of Heroes gives you the 2nd edition stats for the characters that appear in a lot of the early novels and trilogies and things like that. So I thought, pick it up, read it, and then just review it on the channel, which I'm going to do for pretty much every 2nd edition source book that I've kind of been recollecting. Might go into some of the campaign books like the Rod of Seven Parts and Return to the Tomb of Horrors. But I thought this might be a fun little change from the book reviews until I get the time to get back into the gaming and whatnot. So this is going to be a review of the 2nd edition Forgotten Realms source book, Hall of Heroes. Okay, let's get right into it. So this is Hall of Heroes for 2nd edition Dungeons and Dragons. Beautiful cover art by Jeff Easley. This was a Forgotten Realms source book printed back in the day, and the purpose of it was to basically allow dungeon masters to use characters from the popular novels that were being released at the time to introduce them into their games. So let's kind of open this up. This was a print on demand from Drive-Thru RPG. Absolutely fantastic website. And you can see immediately the kind of yellowish pages that they used to have, just absolutely fantastic with the table of contents there. And we're going to start by looking at major characters. Now, it splits the book into major characters and minor characters, and not all of them are heroes. I just want to kind of point that out, but it is what it is. And some of the minor characters, I would argue, are actually major characters in the novels. So we start with Aiden. He is a cleric of Sune from the Avatar trilogy. So you get his kind of stats here, armor class and hit points and whatnot. And then some kind of backstory about him with a picture. Then we have Elias from the Finder's Stone trilogy, one of my favorite fantasy trilogies of all time. I've actually read and reviewed them on the chapter. And there's a picture of her there. Brunor Battlehammer, of course, from the R.A. Salvatore novels, Crystal Shard being his first appearance. But fiction-wise, he has been in a ton of novels. Cyric, another member of the party from the Avatar trilogy, who ends up becoming a god. Spoiler alert. Then we have Doin Shinsharo, I believe, probably from the Horse Lords book. Not really familiar with the character, but that is okay. Of course, Drizzt Do'Urden, very famous R.A. Salvatore character. Dragonbait, again from the Finder's Stone trilogy. Dragonbait was actually brought back in the Tomb of Annihilation 5th edition adventure, where he kind of teams up with the guy trying to find the Ring of Winter. Then we have Elminster, the most famous wizard in all of Forgotten Realms, created by Ed Greenwood. Was actually Ed Greenwood's character when he played Dungeons and Dragons, with a few new spells and whatnot. Kelemvor, again from the Avatar trilogy, eventually ends up, spoiler alert, becoming the god of the dead. He is a fighter who, his family bloodline, he has been cursed in that he cannot do something for a person without receiving a reward. If he doesn't receive a reward for doing something for somebody, he turns into a panther until he kills somebody, and then he can revert back to his human form. So you're getting all of this backstory and how to use them in your campaigns and whatnot. Prince Tristan Kendrick from the Moonshade trilogy. The Moonshade trilogy and the Druid's Home trilogy I have read and reviewed on the channel. He was introduced in the very first Dungeons and Dragons Forgotten Realms novel ever written, Dark Walker on Moonshade by Douglas Niles. Really great series of books, really great character. And then kind of introducing the Moonshade Isles, we have Midnight. Midnight, again, from the Avatar trilogy. Just like Kelemvor, just like Cyric, she ends up becoming the goddess of magic. She is kind of an avatar of Mystra. Robin, she becomes Tristan Kendrick's wife in the Moonshade trilogy and goes on to become, she goes from being a druid who worships the Earth Mother to becoming a cleric of Shantia to becoming a druid of the Earth Mother again. I absolutely love the fact that Print on Demand does the original page kind of colors, and that you get the basic stats. So if you ever run a campaign in the Moonshade Isles, you can throw these characters in there, and it feels like the players are really kind of experiencing the novels as well. Now, this is really old school shit, so keep that in mind. For a lot of new players, you probably haven't read the early Dungeons and Dragons books. And if you haven't, I really urge you to do so. They are absolutely fantastic. But yeah, these are just characters that you can throw in. It's actually really easy to adapt second edition characters into 5th edition, if that is your thing, even into Pathfinder, if that is your kind of system that you really want to play and whatnot. The main point of these books is the history, the description, and how to actually play them. That was the point of 2nd edition source books at the time. Then we have Chandril Shashar. This was from Ed Greenwood's first novel, Spellfire, a book that my brother read and loved back in the day and told me to read it because he knew I would love it, which I did. And a review of that is going up on the channel very soon, or perhaps it's actually even up now. Now, in the novel, she commands what's called Spellfire, and they give you a description of how to incorporate Spellfire into your games, which is really cool that these early source books basically brought new mechanics to Dungeons and Dragons, and then you can incorporate them if you wanted to. You didn't have to. It didn't matter. But the fact that we get like new monsters and new kind of game mechanics was really fun. Nam Tamareth is also from Spellfire. He is a young wizard who ends up marrying Chandril in the novel. Spellfire was itself a standalone novel, but then Ed Greenwood wrote, I believe, 2 more books in the series and created kind of a trilogy, one of them being part of the series of Harper's novels, which is something that I will get into in a later video. Wulfgar, the Barbarian, who was kind of engaged to Brunor Battlehammer's adopted daughter, Catti, a major part of the R.A. Salvatore novels, a fantastic character. And he was basically a barbarian who, when his tribe raided 10 towns, he was defeated and swore fealty to Brunor. But he was so young at the time that Brunor took him under his wing and he became like his adopted son, and Brunor made him this enchanted battlehammer. And it's just, the lore is so freaking rich that it's worth your while to go and read some of these early Dungeons and Dragons novels. If you're interested in that thing, of course. But yeah, just great character art here and whatnot. Just absolutely brilliant. Now we come to the chapter of minor characters. These are characters that appear in the novels briefly, although I disagree with that to an extent, having read these novels my entire life, or my entire nerd life, I should say. So we have Illustrial. She is the ruler of the town of Silvery Moon. We have Alzagard. Not sure where he is from. Morngrim, the leader of Shadowdale, his wife as well. Morngrim appears in quite a few books because early D&D was kind of centered around the Dale lands. You'll see that if you watch the Spellfire video. And slowly things kind of move towards the Sword Coast and not necessarily the Dale lands. So Morngrim appears in quite a few of the early D&D novels, as does his wife, Charles. Kelvin Blackstaff Aronson of Waterdeep. This is a character that is quite interesting in that he starts out as a harper. The harpers being the force of good in the realms. And then he doesn't quite see their point of view as being the right way anymore, and he kind of breaks off. He's very similar to Elminster in power level, but a really fascinating character in a lot of the novels as well. King Azaun of Cormyr, of course, King Azaun the Fourth, I should say. He is the King of Cormyr in a lot of the early novels. Akbar Bel Akash. Now, he is considered a minor character. I disagree with that. He plays a large part in the Finder Stone trilogy and is one of the primary characters. And his role in the novel Song of the Saurials is really quite significant. So I don't know why he's relegated to a minor character. Here, Kasana. Kasana is actually a villain, so I'm not quite sure why she's in the Hall of Heroes, but that's okay. A clone of Elias of Westgate. Again, Zhao Shambrel of Zental Keep, a villain. He is an evil priest of the god Bane. Not quite sure why he's in the Hall of Heroes book, but that is okay. I love the fact that we get his early stats here. You get his statistics in the source book Ruins of Zental Keep, which I will read and review in the future, but it is what it is, of course. Cinder. Let's see, who else do we have? Again, Dareth of Kalashan. He's introduced in Chapter 1 of Darkwalker on Moonshae, plays a significant role in the Moonshae trilogy, and is finally killed off in Darkwell. So, why is he a minor character? He is actually part of like the Robin Tristan love triangle thing there. So that's an odd choice for a minor character. But you know what? It is what it is. We have Dendibar, Dinswart from the R.A. Salvatore trilogy, Dursan of Waterdeep, Artemis Entreri, major villain in R.A. Salvatore's line of books. He is basically Drizzt Do'Urden's biggest foe, if you discount Lolth, the Spider Queen. And I don't know, he's in here. And so we have a whole ton of them. Grunish the Red, a great character from the Moonshae trilogy, who is an enemy that ends up becoming an ally. So, you know, I understand why he's in here, but Harpel. So there's just a ton of these characters. I mean, Khazgoroth. Khazgoroth appears in the sourcebook Moonshae, which is fine. Khazgoroth is the main villain in Darkwalker on Moonshae. Khazgoroth is the avatar of Baal, the god of murder. Why is it in this Hall of Heroes book? It makes no sense. But we just get an absolute ton of these characters, which is absolutely fantastic. Do not get me wrong. I love the fact that if I want to run a Dungeons and Dragons campaign set in the Forgotten Realms around the time of the books that I read growing up as a kid, I can actually do that and introduce my players to these characters. Knowing my players, though, they would probably meet one of these characters and just fucking try to attack them, because that's the guys I play with. That's what they love to do. It's still freaking fun. But reading through these is an absolute nostalgic joy. It just makes me love the fact that I grew up with this kind of stuff. It's a nostalgic overload, which just brings me nothing but happiness. Just going back and reading this and going, I remember that character. I remember that character from that book. I can, like, literally reading some of these entries, I can picture myself with the novel that they're in, sitting on the sofa in the back room of my parents' house in Katoomba. For those of you who don't know where Katoomba is, look it up. Beautiful town. Just sitting there reading it in the morning before school or on a Saturday afternoon. The television's on. My parents are watching something and I'm just sitting there reading. I can remember sitting in my bedroom with my D&D second edition stuff, just sitting on my bed, reading through it. I can remember sitting there, kind of going through these source books as I'm designing or writing Dungeons and Dragons adventures to run for the group that I was kind of playing with. I was the dungeon master and just writing adventures for them and trying to incorporate these sorts of characters and scenarios and things like that into that. That is what this kind of a book kind of brings me every time I sit down and read it. Which I'm sure for those of you who are watching this video who used to play D&D back in high school, I'm sure it's the same for you. It's a nostalgic kick right to the gonads. And that's what we need these days. We just need to remember who we were. That's all this is. It's just remembering who we were. Then you have Adventuring Brotherhoods, the Knights of Mithranor from Spellfire. And you get kind of all the stats for them. Back when it was, back when D&D was a more simplistic, and I say simplistic not in a negative way, but you had Thaco to hit armor class 0, and then you just added the numbers up and whatnot, and it wasn't just a series of tables and things like that. Just absolutely gorgeous book. And one of my favorites. This was one of the first ones I read. I do have an absolute ton of this second edition Reminiscence coming, just because I need the nostalgia factor this year. This year is all about nostalgia for me. So this is the first book that I have reviewed. There is going to be an absolute ton more. Do not worry about that. Books that I used to own or books that I wanted to own and have managed to get them through Drive-Thru RPG, a fantastic website if you want that nostalgia kick. But it's not just D&D. I'm just looking at it for the second edition stuff. There is an absolute ton of content on there. You can get it as downloads. You can get it as print on demand. It's entirely up to you. But this was Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition, Hall of Heroes. Absolutely love this. Never had it back in the day, but I am so glad that I did. I am so glad that I am going back and rereading all of the old fantasy books. They will be reviewed on the channel. So if you enjoyed the content, like, subscribe, leave a comment. Tell me what your favorite role-playing game is, or your favorite role-playing game accessory is, or anything along those lines. And if I've got it on my shelf, hey, I'll do a read and review for you guys. So there you have it. Cheers, everyone. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Stay safe. And most importantly, play a fucking role-playing game, people.